The front cover of the Rainbow Oracle of Mandala City blends spiritual, utopian, and countercultural themes associated with the Rainbow Family movement. Featuring a circular arrangement of teepees around a fire center labeled Common Ground, it symbolizes unity and communal gathering. The title New Jerusalem suggests a visionary or holy society, reinforced by a Christ-like figure at the bottom, extending a gesture of blessing. Flanking the scene are two figures, a future seer, representing mysticism, and a laborer labeled needs-loving lather, symbolizing the balance between spiritual insight and everyday life. The artwork integrates Native American, Christian, and New Age symbolism, portraying an idealistic, nature-based spirituality central to the movement's philosophy. Page 01 serves as a dedication within a spiritual booklet, honoring those who have suffered, the warriors of the rainbow, and all family members in heaven and on earth, while attributing its creation to divine guidance. The central illustration features a tree with handwritten text referencing Revelation chapter 10 verses 9 to 10, symbolizing spiritual nourishment. Above the tree, an arch displays religious symbols from various faiths, alongside human figures and floral motifs, emphasizing unity and inclusivity. Surrounding elements like bees, birds, and vines reinforce themes of nature and interconnectedness, aligning with the countercultural and New Age philosophies of the Rainbow Family movement. Page 02 features a mystical and religiously inspired image framed within an ornate archway, reinforcing the theme of sacred space. The central figure appears ethereal and angelic, with wings extending outward, possibly symbolizing a divine or enlightened being. The background blends cloud-like formations with additional human-like forms, evoking a sense of transcendence or spiritual ascent. Two incense burners hang symmetrically, a traditional symbol of ritual purification and worship, enhancing the ceremonial atmosphere. The text below, come and worship, suggests a call to spiritual gathering, devotion, or communal reverence. The artistic style, reminiscent of visionary and esoteric art, aligns with the Rainbow Family's countercultural and spiritualist themes, blending elements of mysticism, worship, and communal experience. Page 03, titled Practically Yours Plus Ours, presents a manifesto-like message advocating for peaceful and harmonious living on Earth. It combines spiritual, ecological, and social themes, emphasizing the ecolution, a concept integrating economy, ecology, evolution, revolution, revelation, and ecstasy. The page structures its philosophy in a question-answer format, suggesting that a folk city serves as a living example of this ideal, with the home and self as central components. The playful phrasing, because it's out of sight, reflects countercultural and New Age influences, suggesting an optimistic and immediate approach to transformation. The text further frames this movement as a collective adventure dedicated to global peace and harmony, with free distribution of the booklet intended to spread these ideals. It is credited to the amalgamated Children of Peace, Children of God, Rainbow Family of Living Light, reinforcing its ties to the Rainbow Family's spiritual and communal ethos. The handwritten, free-form style enhances the sense of grassroots activism and personal expression. Page 04 features the Rainbow Family of Living Light emblem at its center, framed by an organic illustration of vines, flowers, and grape clusters, symbolizing growth, harmony, and a deep connection to nature. A rising sun in the background represents enlightenment and new beginnings. The text promotes suggestion number 1 equals World Family Gathering, advocating for unity and peace through communal gatherings. A note at the bottom highlights that the page was printed on recycled paper, with a press of grace, starshine, love, and faith, reinforcing the Rainbow Family's values of environmental consciousness, spirituality, and collective vision. The artistic, free-form style reflects the movement's grassroots and countercultural ethos. Page 05 provides logistical details for the World Family Gathering at Table Mountain in Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado, scheduled from July 1 to 4, 1972, referred to as Peace Year 1. The expected attendance is 144,000 people, with preparations to accommodate more. It emphasizes communal food sharing, encouraging attendees to bring enough for themselves and one other person, with a preference for natural and healthy foods such as grains, vegetables, nuts, and dried goods. Main kitchens will be established for efficient meal preparation, requiring volunteers for construction and cooking. Attendees are also advised to bring their own eating utensils and be mindful of waste disposal. The gathering will operate without electricity, relying on wood fuel from naturally fallen trees for fires, ensuring minimal environmental impact. The closing line, "And the first shall be last, plus the last shall be first," suggests an egalitarian philosophy central to the event's vision of unity and harmony. Page 06 combines spiritual symbolism, communal unity, and resilience. At the top, a radiant sun symbolizes enlightenment and divine energy, while a bordered text from the Rainbow Info Center Vortex 1, dated September 1970, addresses the Rainbow family as a global spiritual community. The message acknowledges opposition from the twin forces of darkness and destruction, but affirms the endurance of love and spiritual growth. Below, an illustration of figures holding hands, accompanied by phrases like, "With the light bright at our heads and we'll always gather together in Lord's name," reinforces themes of collective faith and unity. The page's poetic language, mystic imagery, and freeform style reflect the Rainbow family's countercultural vision of harmony, resilience, and divine connection. Page 07 provides practical details for the World Family Gathering on Table Mountain, focusing on shelter, clothing, and community organization. It emphasizes the need for attendees to bring their own portable shelters, such as tents or teepees, with no permanent structures allowed. Shared facilities, including kitchens, food storage areas, childcare centers, and medical stations, will also be constructed. The text advises participants to prepare for cold nights at 8,600 feet elevation, bringing sleeping bags, blankets, and rain gear, with a free clothing exchange planned. The gathering site is described as a large meadow, encircled by smaller meadows, divided into 4 main living areas centered around communal kitchens, fire pits, and aid stations. The layout is inspired by sacred city designs from religious texts, including the Bible's New Jerusalem, the Vedas, the Quran, and Native American spiritual visions, symbolizing unity among all peoples and faiths. The city will feature 12 gates, with greeters welcoming attendees and providing guidance. The structure replaces traditional walls with living rings of camps, schools, kitchens, and community services, reinforcing an egalitarian and harmonious way of living. Page 08 features a mandala-like illustration filled with floral and organic patterns, symbolizing harmony, growth, and spiritual balance, with a central lotus flower representing enlightenment. The phrase "Peace be with you" surrounds the artwork, reinforcing the Rainbow family's philosophy of love and tranquility. Below, a handwritten poem uses rain as a metaphor for renewal, describing nature opening to receive blessings, sunlight transforming raindrops into prisms, and the appearance of a rainbow as a sign of harmony and fulfillment. The final line, "Love is all around," emphasizes universal love and interconnectedness. Additional small drawings, including a rainbow over a hill with a cross, merge natural mysticism with spiritual elements, reflecting the Rainbow family's countercultural and communal ethos. Page 09 details the planned educational, cultural, and spiritual aspects of the World Family Gathering. It describes a teepee village as the event's central hub for information, medical supplies, and communal discussions on social issues such as trade, communication, housing, and sustainability. The schools section outlines an open learning environment where attendees can share knowledge in areas such as sustainable living, organic farming, natural childbirth, and appropriate technology, including solar energy and methane gas generators. Artistic and performance-based learning will be encouraged, with music, storytelling, and theater serving as forms of expression. Political discourse will also be welcomed, offering a platform for individuals to voice opinions on governance, social justice, and interrelations at local, national, and global levels. The page highlights a school of religion, providing a space for all spiritual beliefs to be shared without coercion, aiming to foster understanding and prevent religious conflict. The overall vision is an egalitarian, money-free exchange of knowledge, skills, and cultural traditions, reinforcing the Rainbow family's ethos of unity, learning, and peaceful coexistence. Page 10, an open letter to Albert Einstein, reflects on Einstein's theory of relativity, praising his insights while lamenting the misuse of scientific discoveries, particularly in the creation of nuclear weapons. It poetically explores the idea that matter is pure energy, symbolizing the unity of the smallest and largest aspects of existence. Despite acknowledging destruction, the writer remains hopeful, proclaiming that the energy children are rising and peace is on the way. Accompanying illustrations include a cosmic scene symbolizing universal interconnectedness, and a photograph of smiling children representing hope for the future. Another passage dismisses concerns about who will attend the gathering, emphasizing that the real superstar resides in one's heart. The page embodies the Rainbow family's countercultural philosophy, blending science, spirituality, and social critique into a vision of collective awakening and transformation. Page 11 outlines key organizational aspects of the World Family Gathering, focusing on councils, childcare, fire safety, and medical care. The councils section describes designated discussion areas for open dialogue on topics such as organic living, community structures, sustainable fuel sources, and the possibility of establishing a permanent city. These councils aim to foster the merging of ideas and communal decision-making. The Childcare and Kid City section highlights the creation of sheltered childcare centers, where parents can temporarily leave their children, emphasizing community responsibility in raising the young. Facilities will include baby food preparation, diaper services, and cooperative laundering, while older children will have a Kid City designed to encourage self-directed learning and independence. The Fire Watch section details plans for a mounted fire patrol, watch stations, and emergency preparedness, with fire towers and designated escape routes to ensure safety. A medical section describes the setup of first aid stations, a medical center, and a potential full-scale field clinic, with outreach to the Red Cross for assistance. Herbal medicine will also be available for those interested. The page reinforces the Rainbow family's ethos of self-sufficiency, communal care, and proactive safety planning. Page 12 blends announcements, philosophy, and symbolism related to the World Family Gathering. It invites filmmakers to contribute to a Rainbow-sponsored film and encourages those interested in creating new communities to meet under a designated star emblem, reinforcing the Rainbow family's vision of self-sustaining societies. A central illustration depicts a cosmic scene with a rainbow and celestial elements, accompanied by the phrase, "The greatest revelation is stillness," emphasizing spiritual contemplation. Practical guidance includes a note for pet owners about a designated kennel area. Additional symbolic elements include a drawing of a key labeled "The Key" and a statement about personal responsibility, "I am only one. I cannot do very much, but what I can do, I will do." A closing quote from PK suggests trust in the natural flow of life beyond human plans. The page reflects the Rainbow family's mix of communal organization, introspection, and a belief in both individual and collective contributions. Page 13 details logistical planning for the World Family Gathering, covering sanitation, parking, and information management. The sanitation section addresses water scarcity and pollution concerns, with plans to negotiate water rights, pump clean water, and encourage attendees to bring their own supply. Waste disposal will involve composting, trench latrines, and recycling, ensuring environmental sustainability, while sauna baths along the Colorado River will support hygiene. The parking section outlines a structured plan to prevent congestion by designating multiple areas for vehicles and mobile homes, with a dedicated crew managing traffic flow. The information section describes a central hub at the teepee village for handling media, geography details, and rumor control, reinforcing the communal and cooperative nature of the gathering. The closing phrase, "Ask and ye shall receive," encapsulates the event's ethos of shared knowledge and support. Page 14 presents a mystical and poetic reflection on time, cycles, and spiritual unity, accompanied by intricate celestial and geometric illustrations. The text speaks of the fifth moment and the day 365, suggesting a symbolic festival of light and union beyond temporal phases. It calls for meditation on the oneness of the beginning and the end, reinforcing themes of cosmic wholeness and transcendence. The passage describes a cycle where all phases dissolve into a unified state, where the real is then potential, and death is then rebirth, emphasizing renewal and infinite progression. The imagery includes interconnected stars, circular patterns, and a symbolic clock-like design marked with numbers, reinforcing the idea of cycles and divine harmony. The concluding lines affirm that all things are then propitious for beginning once again, encapsulating the Rainbow family's spiritual vision of eternal renewal and interconnected existence. Page 15 is a May 20th position report, providing final details and dispelling rumors about the World Family Gathering at Table Mountain, Rocky Mountain National Park, from July 1 to 4, 1972. It confirms that the event is proceeding, with ongoing negotiations over water rights. Attendees are invited to participate in a free, religious, and spiritual gathering, where people of all races and beliefs can share their highest wisdom and creative experiences. The event is expected to host 144,000 people, with 12 open gates for welcoming and information. 4 main living areas will each have a free kitchen, childcare center, lost and found, medical aid, fire watch stations, and council circles to discuss whole earth technology, communication, and community building. Schools will teach arts, crafts, politics, yoga, and religion, while a teepee village will serve as the main information and communications hub, with no electricity or machines allowed. Musicians, storytellers, and performers will share their talents acoustically, and no money will be used in the gathering. A booklet, Practically Yours Plus Ours, is available to guide attendees on the gathering's historical, religious, and logistical aspects. The page emphasizes preparation, asking participants to bring warm clothing, shelter materials, food, and tools, while encouraging caravanning to minimize traffic and pollution. The event will culminate on July 4th at noon with a silent meditation, where attendees are invited to bring rocks, trumpets, and bells. The message concludes with a warm communal greeting from the Rainbow family of living light, reinforcing its vision of unity and peace. Page 16 is an intricate geometric illustration, resembling a mandala, embodies the World Family Gathering's themes of unity, spiritual awakening, and interconnectedness. Its layered triangles, circles, and fractal-like patterns symbolize cosmic harmony, reflecting the rainbow family's vision of Mandala City, a self-sustaining, intentional community built on peace and holistic living. The design suggests the cyclical nature of time and existence, aligning with previous discussions of dissolution, rebirth, and natural rhythms. Serving as a visual representation of the gathering's ideals, the artwork reinforces the movement's commitment to openness, evolution, and a harmonious way of life. Page 17, titled History of the Gathering, is a personal narrative reflecting on the author's spiritual and philosophical journey that led to their involvement with the World Family Gathering. It begins with a reflection on their origins in Montana, growing up in a large, close-knit Western family with simple traditions such as communal picnics and gatherings that emphasized laughter, storytelling, and connection. The narrative recounts early religious exposure through the Salvation Army and the Nazarene Church, followed by a recurring childhood dream about two rivers and valleys merging into one, a vision that materialized in Marblemont in 1969. The author describes teenage years spent at the Deaconess Home for Children, where deep discussions on God and social injustices fueled a questioning of why war and prejudice persisted. This search for meaning continued into military service, where experiences in the U.S. Navy led to disillusionment with structured systems, especially regarding Vietnam. Eventually, the author found themselves in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury, experiencing the counterculture movement's energy before encountering new spiritual insights. The passage ends with gratitude to a friend named Malcolm for awakening their understanding and inspiring their search for truth, reinforcing the rainbow family's ethos of personal enlightenment, communal living, and spiritual exploration. Page 18 features a poetic meditation on nature, renewal, and the symbolic power of the rainbow. The poem describes a river's spray and broken water catching light, producing a shimmering rainbow, representing a moment of beauty and transformation. The phrase Wakan promise alludes to sacred or spiritual assurance, possibly referencing indigenous beliefs about the rainbow as a sign of harmony and renewal. The imagery of the rainbow above the mountain and its unity with the sun suggests a merging of elements, reinforcing the rainbow family's themes of interconnectedness and natural balance. The final stanza portrays the rainbow bird spreading its wings, evoking a sense of liberation, joy, and spiritual transcendence. Accompanying the poem are hand-drawn elements, including a small mandala-like floral design and an ornate rendering of the word rainbow, further emphasizing the visual and symbolic unity of the natural world and the gathering's ideals. Page 19 continues the author's spiritual and philosophical reflections, recounting experiences of communal gatherings, personal journeys, and cultural awakenings. It describes a moment where thousands of people gathered to sing praises to the Lord, emphasizing a collective spiritual realization. The narrative moves through Haight-Ashbury, highlighting the merging of Western and Eastern thought and the search for self-completion and unity. The author recalls interactions with tourists, counterculture figures like Ginsberg and Leary, and the rise of the Burke scene. The passage reflects on law, morality, and personal conviction, referencing Billy Jack and the idea that when authorities break the law, survival becomes the only rule. The journey continues eastward through Montana, Boulder, and Miami, culminating in New York City, where the author helped establish a communal coffeehouse and engaged in social activism. The page closes with a reference to Christmas Day 1968 at Sheep Meadow, suggesting a symbolic moment of homecoming, aligning with the rainbow family's vision of spiritual unity and transformation. Page 20 features a handwritten version of the Prayer of St. Francis, a well-known Christian prayer emphasizing peace, compassion, and selflessness. The left side of the page begins with the plea, "Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace," followed by a series of contrasts illustrating the transformative power of love, forgiveness, faith, and joy in overcoming hatred, injury, doubt, despair, darkness, and sadness. The right side continues with a request to be more focused on consoling rather than being consoled, understanding rather than being understood, and loving rather than being loved, reinforcing the ideals of humility and service. The prayer concludes with the notion that giving, pardoning, and self-sacrifice lead to spiritual fulfillment and eternal life. A small, circular floral design at the bottom visually complements the prayer's themes of harmony and renewal. In the context of the World Family Gathering, this page aligns with the movement's emphasis on communal support, love, and a higher spiritual purpose beyond individual needs. Page 21 continues the narrative of spiritual awakening, communal experiences, and the search for a harmonious way of life. The author recalls traveling from New York City to San Francisco and Alaska, seeking visions and deeper understanding. A central vision involves a tree of life, symbolizing unity among people, with brothers and sisters holding hands and children playing freely. The narrative touches on key locations and gatherings, including Independence Pass, Light Family, and the Ute Sundance in Colorado, before revisiting San Francisco and the author's experiences with various spiritual seekers. The account highlights an evolving journey through communal living, transformative encounters, and significant cultural gatherings like Pioneer Square Art Festival, Vortex One, and Rainbow Fair Ashram. It mentions influences from the Hopi people, connections with various figures in the counterculture movement, and reflections on unity, peace, and the interconnectedness of all beings. The page closes with an expression of gratitude, a call for continued spiritual pursuit, and a return to Oregon, signifying renewal and rising into a higher state of consciousness. Page 22 features an intricate black and white illustration that visually represents a mystical or spiritual journey. The swirling composition, converging toward a radiant center, evokes a sense of ascension or transcendence, suggesting a gateway to divine enlightenment. The imagery closely resembles Dante's Paradiso, particularly the Empyrean, where souls ascend toward ultimate unity with God. The handwritten caption, "Into the place wherein thou art, O Father," reinforces this interpretation, framing the illustration as a depiction of entering a sacred or celestial realm. In the broader context of this document, which emphasizes spiritual awakening, communal harmony, and metaphysical exploration, this page serves as a visual culmination of the journey described throughout. It symbolizes a return to the divine source, aligning with the Rainbow family's ideals of unity, peace, and a cosmic connection beyond earthly existence. Page 23 continues the themes of spiritual unity, community, and the evolving journey of the Rainbow family. It references gatherings, including the Rocky Mountain National Park site, and the importance of sharing ideas, love, and spiritual growth. Mentions of individuals and locations suggest a widespread network of like-minded people, contributing to a movement that embraces peace, love, and interconnectedness. The text reflects on history, touching on political and social inclusivity, while also emphasizing the transformative potential of collective action. A poem by Rose reinforces the symbolism of the rainbow as a sign of unity and awakening, while a song by Fast Ed Snug evokes a sense of warmth, nostalgia, and the spirit of togetherness, using imagery of bells ringing and Christmas joy. The overall message aligns with the Rainbow family's ideals: harmony, love, and the hope for a better, peaceful future. Page 24 presents two distinct themes: alternative energy and spiritual fulfillment. The first section, titled Organic Fuel Sources, advocates for sustainable energy solutions, particularly tidal energy. It describes a concept involving tidal turbines placed in the sea, using the natural motion of the tides to generate electricity without disrupting rivers, atomic structures, or relying on fossil fuels. The emphasis is on clean, renewable, and reliable energy drawn from the Earth's natural rhythms. The second section, the Bible, discusses a spiritual perspective on history and prophecy. It frames the Old Testament as the story of creation, the New Testament as the story of resurrection, and proposes that a third book, the Book of Life, has yet to be written, signifying an unfolding spiritual fulfillment for all people. This section calls for scribes to document this next spiritual chapter, urging those who feel ready to participate in this divine mission. A heart with a Star of David symbol reinforces the spiritual call to action. Page 25 continues the theme of spiritual reflection, unity, and personal freedom. The first section includes lyrics from Happy Faces, a Christmas song that emphasizes joy, giving, and a sense of homecoming whenever one hears the bells ring. The text then transitions into a heartfelt message about perseverance through life's hardships, faith in Jesus, and gratitude for spiritual guidance. There is a special acknowledgement to figures like Mr. Nelson, the Salvation Army, and the Nazarene Church for their role in the author's spiritual journey. A quoted statement follows, emphasizing that true freedom is only realized when all beings, human or otherwise, experience it, highlighting a universal perspective on justice and harmony. The page concludes with an excerpt from Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, celebrating the open road as a metaphor for individual freedom, self-reliance, and a rejection of societal constraints in favor of personal enlightenment. Page 26 is an illustration that presents a symbolic representation of unity, spirituality, and interconnectedness. The central geometric pattern, reminiscent of sacred geometry, is surrounded by petals, each containing a different spiritual or philosophical symbol: the Christian cross, the Jewish Star of David, the Hindu Om, the yin-yang symbol, a heart, a peace sign, and other indigenous or universal emblems. This artwork aligns with the overarching themes of the text, which emphasize inclusivity, harmony, and the coming together of all people and traditions under a shared vision of peace and enlightenment. The placement of these symbols within a flower-like structure reinforces the idea of natural, organic growth toward unity and mutual understanding. This page serves as a visual encapsulation of the ideals expressed throughout the book, reinforcing the gathering's vision of a global, spiritually connected community. Page 27 presents a play story titled Pied Together, Rainbow, written by Plunker and Friends in 1969, dedicated to Jesus and adapted from Robert Browning's The Pied Piper of Hamelin. The narrative follows children in a peaceful valley who, through play, discover division and fear, personified by a mysterious hat-wearing figure named Conflicted Rat, who represents the consequences of accumulated love and prayer. The children, frightened, seek guidance, leading to a town confrontation about overcoming darkness and destruction. The text transitions into a critique of world leadership, referencing Richard Nixon, Alexis Kosygin, and religious figures, suggesting that leaders should seek spiritual awareness and connection with God, rather than being distracted by worldly concerns. The passage reflects on karma, deliverance, and the role of meditation in finding spiritual clarity. The overall tone is one of social and spiritual critique, encouraging self-awareness and divine connection over political and material distractions. Page 28 contains a poetic reflection on love, self-awareness, and inner peace, framed within a spiritual and philosophical context. The text begins with a prayer-like invocation to the givers of light, seeking the ability to love others as freely as the light shines. The passage encourages rejecting external falsehoods, embracing childlike openness, and recognizing the interconnected nature of reality. It suggests that truth and guidance should come from within, rather than from external figures or teachings, warning against becoming a slave to another's world or ideology. The message promotes self-discovery, personal peace, and a universal oneness, reinforcing that answers lie within the individual rather than in external realities. The page is adorned with intricate hand-drawn illustrations, including heart motifs, vines, and a small framed sketch of people raising their arms, symbolizing joy or enlightenment. The artistic elements further emphasize themes of interconnectedness, growth, and spiritual unity. The signature youth suggests the message is directed at or written by young seekers of truth and enlightenment. Page 29 continues the allegorical and philosophical themes of the text, emphasizing spiritual enlightenment, nonviolence, and the rejection of blind obedience to authority. It argues that true faith lies in love, forgiveness, and unity, rather than war or rigid dogma. The latter part presents a socio-political retelling of the Pied Piper, where a town's battle against rats becomes a critique of war and leadership. The story follows Oscar, an unsuccessful hero and a mercenary hired by the mayor, illustrating how militarized solutions fail against perceived enemies. The narrative highlights the futility of war, the manipulation of people by those in power, and the idea that true leadership and peace come from understanding rather than force. Page 30 presents a rewritten Pledge of Allegiance that broadens the concept beyond a single nation, declaring loyalty to all children and the planet, emphasizing unity, liberty, and blessings for all. It includes excerpts from Thomas Jefferson's writings, focusing on religious freedom, the evolving nature of laws, and the inherent rights of individuals. The quotes reflect Enlightenment ideals, particularly the belief that freedom and morality should not be dictated by coercion or religious mandates, but should be left to individual conscience. The handwritten annotations celebrate Jefferson's influence on the Declaration of Independence, invoking a call to action for the children of liberty to rise again. The page conveys a revolutionary spirit, linking historical democratic ideals with a contemporary vision of global unity and moral evolution. Page 31 continues the allegorical story about the town's struggle with the metaphorical rats, representing societal issues. The children persist in questioning the town officials about their plan to deal with the problem. The mayor and council attempt a compromise, deciding that habitation would be necessary for proper control. They propose sending the rats to a diplopolitan in a communal land experiment, reflecting a satirical critique of political bureaucracy and ineffective solutions. The diplopolitan, however, misunderstands the situation and fails to grasp the children's warnings about the deeper social decay. The rats, symbolic of greed, vanity, and corruption, continue to spread, reinforcing the futility of the town's leadership. The children, realizing the town's leaders are complicit or powerless, weep in despair as they watch the townspeople remain blind to their plight. The passage ends on a somber note, emphasizing the cyclical nature of societal complacency and moral erosion. Page 32 conveys a deeply spiritual and communal message, emphasizing love as the guiding principle above all else. The large handwritten text, "Love cometh first, all else shall be added," reinforces the idea that love is the foundation upon which everything else is built. The central poem expresses a personal and collective yearning for unity, wisdom, and healing, referring to warriors of the rainbow, and the vision of a mended world where all people become one tribe. The text encourages patience, resilience, and faith in a shared path of spiritual growth and interconnectedness. The artwork, including the praying figure and lotus-like design, visually reinforces themes of peace, enlightenment, and harmony. A final handwritten note invites those who cannot physically attend the gathering to be present in spirit, further strengthening the page's theme of inclusive love and unity. The mention of a snow-white dove symbolizes purity, peace, and divine guidance. Page 33 continues the allegorical narrative, portraying a scene where children recognize the town's deteriorating state, yet the townspeople remain passive. A traveler named Lisa arrives, questioning the children about their perception of freedom. She introduces them to grass of wisdom, a metaphorical herb symbolizing spiritual awakening and unity. She emphasizes that true freedom is not granted by any man, but is a state of being that must be embraced and nurtured within. The passage transitions into a sermon-like proclamation, calling on people from all walks of life to embrace love, unity, and divine connection. The children are inspired, seeking wisdom from a mysterious figure who represents spiritual enlightenment. They attempt to confront the mayor with their newfound knowledge, offering a symbolic gold to rid the town of its metaphorical rats, which seem to represent corruption and ignorance. However, the mayor hesitates, leading to an unresolved tension about whether true freedom and enlightenment will be accepted or denied. Page 34 blends spiritual invocation, communal celebration, and natural imagery, emphasizing themes of unity, divine guidance, and harmony with the earth. The text, "O Son of Sons, come and shine upon your children and we will be fine," reflects a plea for enlightenment and cosmic connection. The dancing figures beneath a radiant heart-shaped sun suggest joyful unity, while the lower portion, depicting trees and organic designs, represents nature's grounding presence. The inset image of a flute-playing figure labeled Time evokes indigenous wisdom, storytelling, and the eternal passage of time. The illustration aligns with the book's overarching themes of peace, spiritual awakening, and interconnectedness with the universe. Page 35 continues the allegorical narrative of freedom, confronting deception and false leadership. The mayor and town council attempt to manipulate events by falsely claiming victory over the rats, while freedom exposes their deception, urging the people to seek truth and reject illusions. Freedom's journey to the sea and symbolic plea for purification contrast with the corrupt leaders who manipulate appearances. A reference to the People's Army Jamboree in Portland, 1970, connects this story to real-world activism, emphasizing love as the ultimate force for change. The passage concludes with freedom condemning the leaders' dishonesty, predicting the downfall of their illusion, and leaving the people to face the consequences of their actions. Page 36 features a beautifully illustrated rendition of the hymn Amazing Grace, written in decorative calligraphy, surrounded by floral and nature-inspired embellishments. The lyrics express themes of redemption, spiritual awakening, and divine grace, emphasizing a journey from blindness to enlightenment. The inclusion of musical notation reinforces the song's enduring nature as both a hymn and a universal symbol of faith and perseverance. Given the context of the previous pages, which explore spirituality, unity, and social consciousness, this page serves as a culminating affirmation of the overarching themes of love, forgiveness, and divine guidance in the human experience. Page 37 continues the allegorical narrative, where the mayor and town council, initially resistant, witness the consequences of their greed and deception as plagues return. Freedom, a symbolic figure, offers them a path to redemption through light, life, and love, but the town's corruption persists. The children, guided by freedom, ascend to the mountains, seeing a rainbow as they sing a hymn about unity and divine connection. The passage questions the meaning of a world without hope, love, or trust, reinforcing the story's moral themes. The final section acknowledges real-world contributions from communities in Arkansas, referencing a Christmas spirit of goodwill, suggesting a broader message of unity and collective compassion. Page 38, titled The Plunker, presents a hand-drawn illustration of a simple stringed instrument and explores its cultural and spiritual significance. The text references Psalm chapter 150, which calls for praising God with music, and lists various string instruments from different global traditions, emphasizing music's universal role in human connection and divine expression. A symbolic framework follows, associating the instrument's two strings with dualities such as man and woman, father and mother, sun and earth, and creative forces of energy, illustrating a philosophy of balance and unity. The passage also discusses the mysterious origins of the plunker, suggesting it emerged from nature or spiritual inspiration, and provides instructions on making one from common materials like coconut shells, seashells, or recycled objects. The page concludes with a recommendation to use the plunker for storytelling, chanting, and meditation, aligning with the broader themes of self-expression, simplicity, and harmony found throughout the text. Page 39 marks the beginning of Act 2, which follows a brief intermission where the people reflect on an invitation before the curtain rises. The setting is dark and dreary, filled with rats, but as the sun begins to rise and people move forward, they seek light and salvation. They sing joyfully as they approach a symbolic door, which gradually opens to reveal light and divine presence, inviting them to unity. The text describes the idea of spiritual awakening, emphasizing that all are one in spirit and must walk the path of love and faith to reach salvation. Meanwhile, the mayor, who once represented the material world and ego, finds himself alone and broken, confronted by an inner voice urging him toward redemption. He ultimately lets go of his burdens, repents, and walks toward the mountain, symbolizing his acceptance of faith. The passage concludes with the biblical message that the first shall be last and the last first, underscoring themes of humility, surrender, and divine grace. In the final moment, all the people ascend, leaving only freedom and the mayor, reinforcing the idea of a transformative journey toward enlightenment. Page 40 presents a spiritual story dedicated to Krishna-conscious devotees and the followers of ISKCON, particularly in honor of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The narrative follows a mystical hunter of souls named Maratha Muni, who walks between reality and non-reality. He encounters a group of children watching for Krishna and sharing prasadam. He sits with them and shares a parable about fishing, symbolizing the act of seeking souls for the divine. He speaks of the Lord's command, battle songs, and the expectation that Arjuna would be ready, referencing the Bhagavad Gita's teachings on devotion and duty. The passage blends Krishna consciousness with themes of universal love and spiritual journey. The page includes a section of devotional song lyrics, referencing the famous Hare Krishna mantra, and a humorous note on it being sung to the tune of Swanee River. An illustration at the bottom depicts Sri Krishna Chaitanya, a revered figure in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, with a companion, reinforcing the devotional aspect of the page. The overall message emphasizes surrender, love for Krishna, and the eternal path of divine wisdom. Page 41 describes a climactic spiritual moment in the text, where freedom leads the mayor and others through a symbolic journey into the mountain, leaving behind their past and embracing a new vision of faith and transformation. The passage emphasizes themes of renewal, forgiveness, and divine guidance, using poetic and prophetic language. Freedom delivers a final invocation, calling for light, love, and wisdom to descend upon humanity, uniting all people in a shared divine purpose. The narrative integrates biblical imagery, referencing revelation and apocalyptic transformation, where the passage of time is condensed into a divine plan beyond human comprehension. As the story concludes, freedom enters the mountain, symbolizing entry into a new heaven and earth, with Jerusalem as a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment. The final moment sees the audience joining hands to recite the Lord's Prayer, reinforcing themes of unity, grace, and redemption, marking a powerful conclusion to the allegorical journey. Page 42 is a highly detailed illustration depicting a whimsical, surreal scene filled with anthropomorphic animals, fairies, and fantastical creatures, evoking a dreamlike atmosphere reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland or classic fairy tales. A central fairy-like figure interacts with a rabbit, while various other small beings engage in playful or industrious activities. Signs like wings ironed and wings painted to be decorated suggest themes of transformation, preparation, and transcendence. In the context of the surrounding spiritual and allegorical narratives, this image may symbolize the transition from conventional reality to an enlightened or liberated state, reflecting the book's broader themes of self-discovery, spiritual awakening, and freedom. Page 43 marks the conclusion of Pied Together, reinforcing the themes of unity, spiritual awakening, and divine guidance. It begins with a closing prayer, referencing a family custom of holding hands in a circle and praying, followed by a patriotic song emphasizing God's grace over America. The text reflects on the idea of America as a land of tribal children and spiritual seekers, with a hope that it will survive as a testament to faith. A postscript suggests that the story aligns with biblical prophecies from Revelations and The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis, calling for an end to confusion and a return to divine order. The passage concludes with a poetic breakdown of symbolic colors: rats, representing conflict, fear, politics, and war; freedom as a divine rainbow spirit beyond gender and ego; and children as beings of light with a right to spiritual entry. The overall message urges peace, self-awareness, and readiness for a spiritual transformation. Page 44 is a poetic reflection on faith, self-acceptance, and spiritual freedom. The author asserts that God is as a fundamental truth, questioning how this reality should influence one's actions. The contrast between John walking with his crucified Christ and the speaker dancing in the sunlight highlights differing approaches to faith, one embracing suffering, the other joy. The poem rejects the idea of needing God as an excuse or as something to blame, instead embracing a liberated, ecstatic relationship with the divine. The speaker, now free from metaphorical crutches and lameness, expresses joy, movement, and connection with God, culminating in the phrase, "Brother Christ, I'll dance with thee." The handwritten note at the bottom, signed by Chumido, playfully suggests that spiritual enlightenment leads to youthfulness. The poem blends mysticism, Christian imagery, and a personal interpretation of faith as a celebration of life and movement. Page 45 contains a heartfelt message of gratitude, reflection, and hope from the author, Reverend Barry Plunker Adams. It acknowledges those who have supported, listened, and shared in the vision of the movement, expressing deep appreciation for the love and care received along the journey. The text reflects on family, community, and spiritual dedication, addressing misunderstandings and struggles while reaffirming faith in divine guidance. It speaks to unity, resilience, and the coming together of the rainbow family, emphasizing a desire for continued connection and mutual support. The page also references an upcoming gathering on July 1st, positioning it as a moment of collective hope and renewal. The closing statements affirm a belief in overcoming darkness through love and faith, ending with Om Shanti Amen, a fusion of spiritual traditions symbolizing peace and unity. Page 46 presents 6 symbolic representations of spiritual and philosophical concepts, reinforcing the overarching themes of unity, peace, and divine connection found throughout the discussion. The symbols include the Star of David labeled Harmony, a Christian cross labeled The Way, the Om, AUM symbol labeled AUM, a peace sign labeled Peace, a heart labeled Love, and a yin-yang symbol labeled Flow. These symbols, drawn from different religious and cultural traditions, suggest an inclusive worldview that blends spiritual philosophies into a universal message of coexistence and enlightenment. Given the broader context of the text, which discusses communal living, spiritual awakening, and interconnectedness, this page serves as a visual summary of those ideals, reinforcing the narrative's emphasis on transcending divisions through shared values of faith, love, and balance. Page 47, titled Everything I Know, recounts a childhood story about Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, as told by the author's mother. The tale describes Avalokiteshvara's journey to spiritual enlightenment, where he reaches paradise but cannot enter due to the suffering of others. Instead, he extends his hand back to earth, sending out the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum as a message of divine love and unity. The author reflects on how this story resonated deeply, reinforcing a sense of interconnectedness and shared spiritual pursuit. They describe their personal journey through different beliefs, wandering through Europe, confronting disillusionment with the world's political instability, and experiencing personal revelations, including a transformative moment of illness in Paris that led to a renewed faith. The narrative underscores the idea that visions and spiritual awakenings are universal, and that true belief transcends what is seen, embracing a journey toward enlightenment and communal connection. Page 48 is an illustration which continues the themes of spiritual awakening, enlightenment, and interconnectedness present throughout the discussion. The image depicts a figure standing before a radiant sun or divine light, with beams of energy extending outward, suggesting illumination, guidance, or transcendence. The landscape appears abstract, evoking a mystical journey or spiritual vision. Below, 2 faces emerge, possibly representing shared consciousness, unity, or figures from a visionary experience. The geometric symbol at the bottom reinforces the motif of interconnectedness and divine order, aligning with prior themes of spiritual harmony and universal truth. In the broader context, this image complements the previous discussion on enlightenment, personal revelation, and the journey towards self-awareness and divine connection. PAGE 49 continues the narrative of spiritual journeying, communal living, and self-discovery, emphasizing a philosophy of shared energy and collective consciousness. The text reflects on years of travel, interactions with various countercultural and spiritual groups, and the experience of deepening awareness through community and ritual. References to meditation, free theater, and Renaissance fairs underscore the blending of artistic and spiritual practices. The Lost Child story serves as an allegory for self-discovery, where a wandering child finds solace in another lost soul, symbolizing human connection and shared purpose. The passage concludes with an affirmation of the organic flow of the universe as a guiding force, rejecting hierarchical structures and emphasizing unity under a divine spirit. Page 50, titled From the Task of the Warriors of the Rainbow, presents a spiritual and ecological vision inspired by Indigenous traditions. The text emphasizes the discipline and purification of the body and soul through fasting, prayer, and physical exercise, drawing parallels between the spiritual warriors of the present and the Native American warriors of old. It describes a coming civilization where people reconnect with nature, restoring lands, clearing rivers, and transforming deserts and slums into places of beauty. The accompanying illustrations reinforce these themes with symbolic imagery, a figure reaching out to another, an image of eyes replacing eyes, and a depiction of seeds replacing seeds, suggesting transformation, enlightenment, and renewal. The passage conveys a utopian vision of a harmonious future, achieved through spiritual dedication and environmental stewardship. Page 51 continues the spiritual and communal vision of the task of the warriors of the rainbow, describing a journey toward building a harmonious society based on unity, sustainability, and shared purpose. It begins with the symbolic town of Rainbow, representing a divine covenant of peace and enlightenment, where figures from religious, mythological, and historical backgrounds walk together on the path to perfection. The narrative then shifts to the Vortex Gathering, depicting it as a large-scale experiment in biodegradable living and self-sufficient community building, where 30,000 people practiced cooperation beyond political constraints. The transition to the farm marks the practical realization of these ideals, teaching participants essential survival and communal skills, from farming and home building to waste management and child rearing. The passage concludes by emphasizing generational transformation, as the old become the young and the cycle of life and learning continues, reinforcing the vision of a sustainable and spiritually unified world. Page 52, an illustration. The resurrection of the American Indian symbolizes the revival of indigenous wisdom, spiritual connection, and ecological harmony. At its center is a solemn Native American face, surrounded by imagery of reverence, prophecy, and renewal, including a spiritual figure raising their arms to the Great Spirit, a teepee, and a distant group on a journey. The surrounding inscription references a prophecy of returning lost knowledge and land to indigenous peoples, reinforcing themes of reconciliation and restoration. In the context of the task of the warriors of the rainbow, this vision aligns with the call for a sustainable, spiritually unified future, where Native traditions play a crucial role in guiding humanity back to balance with nature. Page 53, titled The Tablet, continues the spiritual and ecological themes of the previous pages, emphasizing prophecy, transformation, and unity. It recounts a ritualistic planting of Hopi corn, symbolizing a connection to indigenous wisdom and the Creator's spirit, with an emphasis on fulfilling an ancient prophecy where the red man becomes as the white man, and the white man becomes as the red man, leading to the rise of the warriors of the rainbow. A sacred stone tablet with many faces is discovered, connecting to Hopi prophecy, and the gathering is called upon to contribute stones to form a world pyramid, symbolizing global unity. The narrative then shifts to a broader spiritual vision, linking the transformation of civilization to biblical and mythological themes, such as Noah's Ark, and the symbolic passage through a great rainbow. This transformation marks the transition from the age of civilization to the age of cooperation, urging humanity to embrace unity, courage, and spiritual awakening as the Rainbow Warriors enter a new era. Page 54 features an intricate, symmetrical circular design resembling a mandala or sacred geometry pattern, reinforcing the spiritual and cosmic themes from the preceding pages. The interconnected web of lines, stars, and geometric shapes suggests unity, balance, and transformation, mirroring the discussion of the warriors of the rainbow and the transition to a new age. In the context of the tablet, this image may symbolize the interconnectedness of all life, the cosmic order, and the fusion of indigenous prophecy with universal spiritual truths. The mandala-like structure reflects a sense of wholeness and divine design, aligning with the narrative's emphasis on prophecy, sacred knowledge, and the evolution of human consciousness toward unity and cooperation. Positioned after a passage discussing transformation, the age of cooperation, and the fulfillment of prophecy, this illustration likely serves as a visual representation of harmony, enlightenment, and the cyclical nature of time and existence. Page 55 continues the overarching theme of prophecy, transformation, and spiritual awakening. It opens with a reference to Black Elk's vision of the rainbow uniting all nations, emphasizing the fulfillment of ancient religious prophecies as a collective mission. The Diamond Door presents an allegorical tale of a young seeker who initially doubts the existence of the mystical door, but later discovers it through lived experience. The diamond zipper metaphorically unzips reality itself, revealing a more radiant, harmonious version of the world. This moment of enlightenment is framed as a transition from ordinary perception to divine awareness, reinforcing themes of spiritual ascension. The passage then ties this revelation to biblical prophecy, particularly the Book of Revelation, where the rainbow reappears as a symbol of what is to come, the opening of the seventh seal, linking humanity with the divine. The text concludes with a vision of transformation, describing the shift from the age of man to the age of men and women, family, from civilization to cooperation, and ultimately to a higher spiritual existence among saints, heroes, and angels. This final transition encapsulates the dream of unity, fulfillment, and divine evolution. Page 56 presents 6 interconnected illustrations, exploring themes of spiritual transformation, prayer, and the soul's journey. The top panels depict transcendence and cosmic alignment, while the middle panels emphasize devotion, with a kneeling figure and a towering temple-like form inscribed with a prayer. The bottom row reflects on mortality and passage, with a waterfall symbolizing transition and a sleeping figure framed in a heart, accompanied by the bedtime prayer about entrusting one's soul to the divine. In the context of this discussion, the imagery reinforces the overarching themes of prophecy, faith, and the transition from the age of man to divine unity, symbolizing the soul's journey toward enlightenment. Page 57 serves as a call to action, inviting humanity to awaken spiritually and embrace a new era of unity, peace, and cooperation. The narrative recounts the journey of a group of seekers who attended the Are We Kidding Ourselves meeting in San Francisco on September 1, 1971, where they deliberated on their readiness to fulfill a prophetic mission. The gathering culminated in a shared realization. While the world's timing may be uncertain, they declare, "I'm ready," marking a pivotal moment of commitment. The movement then spreads across America and Canada, connecting with various communities, institutions, and spiritual groups, emphasizing an interwoven network of like-minded individuals. The invitation reaches diverse places, from Native American tribes to national archives and even political offices, symbolizing an effort to bridge spirituality, activism, and governance. The passage concludes with blessings, affirmations of divine guidance, and references to Christ's return to earth, reinforcing the themes of faith, transformation, and collective responsibility. Below the text, an illustration features hands reaching up with the phrase, "Take up arms," and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, symbolizing a shift from conflict to peaceful cooperation, aligning with the overarching vision of the Warriors of the Rainbow and their mission to usher in a harmonious future. Page 58 depicts a moment of spiritual connection and unity, centered around the Kundalini Express, which symbolizes movement and shared experience. The text describes people stepping off and on a citizen exchange program, recognizing familiar gestures and eyes, reinforcing a sense of belonging. A key moment occurs when someone takes the narrator's hand and affirms, "This is the essential thing," emphasizing human connection as the core truth. The accompanying illustrations of 2 buses and a mandala-like design filled with symbolic imagery further highlight themes of interconnectedness and spiritual awakening. In the broader discussion, this page serves as a reminder that the essence of transformation lies in recognizing and embracing our shared humanity. Page 59, titled Caravans, presents an energetic and free-spirited call to action, encouraging people to come together and embark on a communal journey. The passage provides a loose guide on how to organize a caravan, emphasizing unity, cooperation, and adaptability. It suggests using local media or word of mouth to gather like-minded travelers, planning logistics such as vehicles and sanitation, and embracing a nomadic lifestyle. The writing reflects the countercultural movement's ideals of living freely, working together, and experiencing the world outside traditional urban life. The text also mentions worker caravans starting around mid-June, with later large-scale gatherings, and encourages participants to contribute through educational performances along the way. The overall tone is spontaneous and optimistic, reinforcing themes of interconnectedness, adventure, and the pursuit of a liberated way of life. The concluding lines, "Let's go, dig it folks, just be as you'd like to be, live free and easy," encapsulate the spirit of personal freedom and collective movement. The accompanying illustration of a weathered traveler with a staff looking into the distance visually reinforces the themes of wandering, resilience, and searching for a new way of living. Page 60, titled Media, calls for ethical and non-exploitative journalism to share the gathering's energy and purpose, while ensuring that any profits from media coverage or related products are reinvested into community initiatives like co-ops, bail funds, and free schools. It also references a pivotal moment in activism, the Embodying Nation seceding from the Union on November 6, 1971, following the Mchitka bomb blast in Eugene, Oregon, linking the movement to anti-nuclear and environmental protests. The illustrations reinforce themes of unity and visionary transformation, with a circular emblem at the top and a surreal landscape at the bottom, symbolizing an alternative future beyond conventional societal structures. Page 61, Caravans Also, A Few Visions, compares the movement to historic wagon trains, encouraging travelers to maintain rhythm, ritual, and environmental consciousness, ecolution-minded. It advises pooling resources, recycling waste, and engaging in outreach, such as puppet shows for children, to spread positive energy along the journey. Worker caravans are urged to bring essential supplies while following logistical guidelines for arrival. Inspired by Steve Gaskin's Monday Night Class, the page suggests creative activism, like Saturation Sunshine, transforming cities with light and demonstrations. It also raises the idea of liberating city-confined kids for summer experiences. The illustration reinforces this theme, depicting a determined figure overcoming greed and exploitation, symbolizing perseverance on the path to a more enlightened society. The page closes with a call to tune in, visit high places, and make it work, emphasizing unity and transformation. Page 62, In the Land of Hazy Tuesday Afternoons, presents a poetic vision of a mystical world that exists only in a crystal drop of mountain rain, where belief and innocence create reality. It describes a child emerging through mist, whispering magic words, and children learning lessons far from their father's touch, symbolizing spiritual awakening and independence. Repeated phrases reinforce the timeless, dreamlike nature of this realm, while imagery of a shining rainbow and universal oneness aligns with the book's broader themes of harmony and transformation. The illustration of a rainbow-lit landscape, butterflies, and celestial elements enhances the ethereal quality, concluding with "All is love," encapsulating the message of unity, faith, and transcendence. Page 63, What is Free and What is Trade? Critiques the modern economic system, arguing that money itself is not the issue, but rather how it is used within exploitative structures, particularly in war spending, incarceration, and resource misallocation. It advocates for sustainable practices, land redistribution, and organic food production, while questioning whether education fosters free-thinking individuals or economic cogs. The discussion on trade contrasts ethical exchange with exploitative business practices, warning that unfair transactions erode trust. Citing Nader's Raiders as an example of public accountability, the text calls for greater transparency. A concluding anecdote about a barter-based marriage arrangement illustrates an alternative, honor-based system of exchange, reinforcing the idea that trade should be rooted in fairness and mutual respect. Page 64, World Family Gathering is a formal invitation presented to U.S. senators and representatives, calling for a religious and spiritual gathering of peace in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park. It describes the event as a time for people of all faiths and backgrounds to unite in prayer, worship, and communal exchange, with similar gatherings also being coordinated in Paris. The letter emphasizes the historical and spiritual significance of the event, viewing it as a moment for healing, faith restoration, and global unity. It outlines efforts to set up information centers across the country to address public questions, and mentions a planned booklet, Practically Yours/Ours, detailing the logistics of the gathering. The organizers hope to formally present the invitation before Congress and ultimately to the United Nations, reinforcing the event's global significance. The letter draws biblical parallels, referring to the gathering as the New Jerusalem, aligning with passages from Revelations 3:21 and 22. It also notes that while national parks cannot be reserved, their use is not restricted, and efforts will be made to work in harmony with park officials. The vision includes a nationwide observance on July 4th, with moments of silence and gatherings in various national parks. The letter concludes with a message about the human search for meaning, quoting a biblical invitation, "Come unto me and I shall give you rest." It is signed by the Rainbow family, reinforcing their commitment to inclusivity, peace, and spiritual unity. Page 65 discusses trade and a formal plea for recognition. The first section critiques materialistic economic systems, using a traditional marriage arrangement as a metaphor for ethical exchange, emphasizing that money is a tool that becomes corrupt only when misused. It warns against attachment to material possessions, advocating for a world rooted in spiritual and communal harmony. The second section, registration as a consultant body to the U.S. and UN, asserts the Rainbow family's desire to be recognized as a consultative body on social and economic affairs. Citing experiences from Haight Street, Woodstock, Vortex 1, and cooperative farms, it argues that their movement has gained valuable knowledge and must be allowed to continue. The closing plea, "Let us be now," demands the right to work toward a better world, rejecting suppression, and reaffirming their place in society as your children. Page 66, titled "For Those Who Like to Know," presents a series of personal and philosophical affirmations centered on evolution, interconnectedness, and the pursuit of a better world. It emphasizes that change is necessary for growth, openness to experience is essential, and differentiation in realities and behavior allows people to learn from one another. The text asserts that all humans are messengers, helping each other realize their dreams, and that love is fundamental to survival. It conveys a belief in the goodness of humanity, the importance of serving one another in the image of God, and the need to reach one's full potential beyond material concerns. The passage also values honesty, imagination, and self-belief as tools for building a better universe, while rejecting rigidity and material attachment. The final thoughts reinforce the idea that life is continuous, that pain is as meaningful as pleasure, and that individuals must signal their positions to each other to clarify the path forward. This declaration aligns with the overarching themes of spiritual evolution, unity, and purposeful living found throughout the text. Page 67, attributed to Gunter Panowitz, reflects on chaos as the foundation of creation and warns that self-destruction begins when individuals cease engaging with their own experiences. It envisions a renaissance of true life, where art and daily rituals gain meaning, imagination creates new possibilities, and humanity unites as a universal family to solve its problems. Below the main text, a poetic invocation calls for divine light, love, and purpose to guide humanity toward enlightenment, urging for wisdom and unity to overcome ignorance and restore spiritual balance. The message aligns with the book's themes of transformation, communal harmony, and the pursuit of a higher way of living. Page 68, on marijuana as sacrament, argues that the use of marijuana is a fundamental human right and a spiritual practice granted by God, equating it to other religious sacraments. The text criticizes laws that criminalize marijuana use, claiming they violate both constitutional and divine principles. It highlights the mass incarceration of individuals for nonviolent offenses, like marijuana possession, and argues that such imprisonment is unconstitutional and unjust, comparing it to the wrongful persecution of Jesus. The passage draws parallels between the use of cannabis in Native American and Christian traditions, likening it to manna from heaven and communion bread. It also critiques fear-based societal restrictions, urging religious and political leaders to stop persecuting people for their spiritual practices. The text concludes with a call to loosen up, embrace open-mindedness, and recognize marijuana as a tool for spiritual awareness rather than a source of moral corruption, encouraging legal action and court challenges to defend this belief. Page 69 continues advocating for marijuana legalization, arguing that prosecuting nonviolent offenders wastes resources and contradicts the principles of a truly free nation. It criticizes inaction, urging people to confront injustices rather than ignore them. The second section, a short letter to the churches and a reminder to the Christian nation, critiques Western Christianity for deviating from its teachings of love and forgiveness, citing Warriors of the Rainbow, which describes Christianity as a broken puzzle needing restoration. It condemns historical atrocities committed in Christ's name, wars, forced conversions, and institutionalized bigotry, blaming centuries of societal conditioning. The passage warns that ignoring injustice equates to sin, equating war, starvation, and destruction with the devil's work, and urges Christians to reread Revelations, repent, and return to a faith rooted in love rather than violence. Page 70 is an illustration featuring an astrological chart for the World Family Gathering on July 4, 1972, marking the first rainbow gathering at Table Mountain, Colorado. Using the tropical Placidus system, the chart maps planetary alignments at the event's precise time and location, reflecting the organizers' belief in its cosmic significance. The 1972 Rainbow Gathering was envisioned as a spiritual convergence, blending countercultural ideals, Native American prophecies, and mystical traditions. The choice of July 4th suggests a symbolic reclaiming of independence through spiritual and communal values rather than politics. The structured circular layout reinforces ideas of cosmic harmony, and handwritten details highlight the gathering's grassroots nature. The chart's inclusion underscores that the Rainbow Gathering was seen not merely as a festival, but as a sacred, divinely aligned event intended to usher in a new era of peace, unity, and enlightenment. Page 71 provides an explanation of the astrological chart for the World Family Gathering at noon on July 4, 1972. It describes how the positions of celestial bodies relate to the event, portraying astrology as a scientific and cosmic framework. The ascendant in Virgo is highlighted as shaping the gathering's overall tone, emphasizing purification, transformation, and self-overcoming through service and communal cooperation. Pluto in the first house is interpreted as a force of regeneration, channeling deep cosmic energy for collective renewal. Uranus in Libra in the second house represents freedom and intuition, encouraging participants to follow their instincts toward a new social harmony. The Sun in Cancer in the 10th house symbolizes strength, self-expression, and a nurturing role for the community. The Moon in Aries in the 7th house indicates a need for relationships built on trust and courage. The explanation integrates these planetary influences to suggest that the gathering was a spiritually significant event meant to usher in transformation, higher wisdom, and universal love. The page encourages attendees to study the stars and embrace light, beauty, and insight. Editor's note: according to Garrick Beck, the two middle pages, page 72 and page 73 of the Rainbow Oracle, were left blank absolutely intentionally because it was challenging us to figure what could possibly go there, after all the remarkable choices for cover, inside cover, back cover, etc. We, the editorial team assembling the art and writings, decided that leaving the centerfold blank was akin to the great silence at the center of the gathering. And, additionally, it was a little like, fill in your own vision as the centerpiece.